Welcome, SAP Insight community. We have another tip, SAP Insight tip, stopping a transaction that's stuck in an hourglass. This tip is for situations where you are running a transaction that could be a report and you've executed a report and the criteria for that report is pretty wide open. So lots of data, the system's going out there to gather lots of data, gets stuck in an hourglass, and you realize you need to stop it, go do something else, or maybe you didn't intend to have the transaction that wide open. Stuck in the hourglass, need to stop that transaction. So let's get right on to that tip. All right, we're over in SAP now, and I'm going to execute the transaction material list. The transaction code is MM60, so I'll grab that from my command field, MM60, and I'll press the enter key on my keyboard to get us into that transaction. Now, as you see in this transaction, as in many transactions in SAP, if you don't already have defaults set up, then SAP leaves it wide open. So when I go to execute this transaction, because I have no fields criteria defined, it's going to go out there and grab all of the materials and all of the plants and all of the material types, all material groups, and created by anyone that's ever created a material in my system, and try to bring back all of that data for me in this report. So I'm going to go ahead and leave it wide open because I want to get that hourglass, and then we're going to stop that transaction. So I'll go up to the execute button, and I'll click on the execute button, or I could use the shortcut F8 key on the keyboard. And now I get that familiar hourglass. I'll go up to the very top left-hand corner of my screen, the control menu. I'll click it, and I have an option in there to stop transaction. I'll click on the stop transaction option, and you'll notice down in the status bar it tells me that the current transaction was reset. It takes me out of the transaction, stops the transaction from processing, and takes me right back to the main menu. Now, another additional tip in here, I'll go back into that transaction, go back up to the command field. MM60 is the transaction. Enter key on the keyboard gets me into the transaction. You can have the situation where you are looking for data, so I'll click on the options button. And when I go into the data options pop-up window, I'm going to go and look for material. So in this case, I have a window that's on top of my main screen. So if I go to execute this as a wide open search, now I don't have enough data in my system to keep me at an hourglass for this particular material search, but I'll show you the function anyway and you'll be able to execute it on your system. So if I left the search for data wide open, clicked on the continue button, if it put me in an hourglass, I would not be able to go back to my control menu that's on my main screen because I've got this pop-up window that Windows says you've got to resolve this first. But notice there's a control menu in my pop-up window, and I can click on the control menu in that pop-up window, and there's a close option. So you can use that close option too, and that'll work for you as well. I'll exit out of this transaction, back to the main menu, and there's your tip. All right, for those of you that are not connected to us right now and you want to see all of our tips and get notes when we have additional tips that are added up there, be sure you get connected to us. We are on LinkedIn. The group is SAP Insight. We're also on Twitter, and that's connected to our LinkedIn group. And if you're a super user or a business user, be sure that you join SAP Insight. You can visit www.sapinsight.com for details. You can also email me, Ginger Luttrell. That's gluttrell@ltcinsight.com. Hope you got a lot from this tip and more in your pocket for loving SAP.